I think you probably need to brush up on your understanding of international law with respect.
Well, I would be helped if you just give me a straight answer to a straight question.
Gaza has been subject to an ongoing occupation since 1967. The fact that Israel withdrew its illegal settlements and took most of its troops out of Gaza in 2005 does not alter the fact that it still remained legally occupied under international law.
Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has said police could be given powers to ban protests outright after the organisers of pro-Palestine rallies refused to postpone demonstrations following that terrorist attack on a synagogue in Manchester on Thursday. Nearly 500 people were arrested in central London on Saturday during protests in support of the proscribed group Palestine Action. The powers announced by the Home Secretary would allow police chiefs to consider the cumulative impact of repeated protests when deciding whether to impose restrictions, such as instructing organisers to hold them elsewhere. They'd need to be satisfied that a protest was likely to cause serious disruption. The changes won't come in this side of the new year. Tomorrow, universities are bracing for pro-Palestine protests on the anniversary of the October the 7th Hamas attacks on Israel. Ben Jamal is the director of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the PSC, which has been part of the organising of many of the demonstrations in the UK, particularly in London. He joins me now. Ben Jamal, I'll come to the current matter of protests in a second, but I just want to give our viewers a sense of where you're coming from. Do you regard the Hamas attacks on civilians in Israel that took place 2 years ago as legitimate resistance against Israel?
Oh, well, good afternoon, Andrew. I mean, I'm surprised that you're starting there, but I'll answer the question. Part of the reason I'm surprised, I'm sure you've done your research, you'll have seen I've commented on numerous occasions on this issue. I think for every Palestinian spokesperson, probably for 3, 4, 5 months after October the 7th, we were routinely asked that. I'll repeat what I said on October the 8th at a meeting at the Labour Party conference. The framework within which one should judge any act of violence is international law. And international law is very, very clear in prohibiting attacks on civilians. Those are war crimes, so they should be condemned. But international law also enshrines an oppressed people, the people living under occupation's right to resist, including through armed resistance. So people do have a right to use armed resistance against occupation, against other violations of their rights of self-determination, but they don't have a right to resist by attacking civilians.
So I'm still not clear then, was it legitimate resistance against Israel or not, given that at the time?
October the 7th involved attack on civilians.
Finish the question. No, I get to finish the question, then you answer. So do you think it was legitimate resistance against Israel, given that Israel didn't occupy Gaza at the time?
Well, Andrew, I think you probably need to brush up on your understanding of international law with respect.
Well, I would be helped if you just give me a straight answer to a straight question.
Gaza has been subject to an ongoing occupation since 1967. The fact that Israel withdrew its illegal settlements and took most of its troops out of Gaza in 2005 does not alter the fact that it still remained legally occupied under international law. And going back, I've already answered your question. So the events on October the 7th that involved attacks on civilians are illegitimate under international law. Any attack on a civilian is illegal under international law. I don't think I could be more clear.
So Hamas attacks on the IDF and Israeli security that day on October the 7th, that was legitimate in your view?
Well, you'd have to examine each and every one of those incidents, but international law is very, very clear, and this is part of the problem. And one of the other things I said on October the 8th is those who condemn, and I don't know whether you would be included in this or not, those who condemn Hamas's attacks on the basis of them being a violation of international law and constituting war crimes, but do not condemn Israel's illegal occupation, imposition for over 77 years on all of the Palestinian people of what is widely regarded across the human rights community as a system of apartheid, and since October the 7th, who have not condemned what is widely now regarded across the international human rights community and genocide scholars as a genocide, have no moral foundations on which to issue their condemnation of Hamas. If you believe in international law and the application of it, as I do, then you apply that consistently and universally.
And of course, Israel doesn't accept it as a genocide, and many other scholars
Well,
don't
no,
either.
most people who perpetrate crimes don't accept. I mean,
I'm simply saying it's a matter for
Andrew,
debate.
let me come back because you've
No,
just
no,
made
no,
a
no.
point.
I'm going to ask
I'd
another
like
question.
to
No,
respond
I'm going to
to
ask
the point
another
you've just
question.
made.
No, because you're bogging down, and I want to get on.
Respond briefly to the point you've made.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Vladimir
I'm going to move and
Putin
ask
does
a
not
question.
accept he's engaged in an illegal occupation of Ukraine.
I don't want to talk about Vladimir Putin. I want to talk about your views and what is happening. Now, you were obviously outraged. Many people across the world were by the scale and nature of the Israeli retaliation, the destruction of the Gaza Strip, the killing of thousands of civilians, including many children. Is that what prompted you to begin marching, or were you marching before that had happened?
No, our first march in response to what happened, we held a protest on October the 9th, and the first march that we held was on October the 14th, by which time I don't remember the figures, but we had already seen thousands of Palestinians already slaughtered, and we had had numerous statements of genocidal intent that were later cited in January 2024 in the case put before the International Court of Justice that was accepted as plausible by the International Court of Justice around Israel's commission of a genocide. To remind your listeners, those included Benjamin Netanyahu. He said this, I think, on October the 7th or at the latest October the 8th, that we will target each and every corner of the Gaza Strip. It will be turned into a deserted island, exactly what Israel has now done. And of course, the notorious comments of Yair Gallant, then the Israeli defense minister, who said nothing is getting into Gaza, no food, no water, no medical supplies, nothing will get in. We are dealing with human animals. So already, yes, when we first marched, we were dealing
which was before Israel had moved against Gaza.
Statements of genocidal intent and thousands of Palestinians already having been slaughtered.
So you were marching against the intent because it hadn't actually happened on October
well, no,
the
thousands
9th.
of Palestinians had already been killed by the time of our first march on October the 14th.
Oh, yeah, but there was a march on October the 9th before that.
No, there was a static demonstration on October the 9th.
It was a demonstration against Israel. You were demonstrating against Israel.
Over 1,000 Palestinians had already been slaughtered.
On October
the 9th, by the way, military analysts, I remember hearing one of them on Newsnight, were already speculating that at least 10 to 20,000 Palestinians were likely to be slaughtered by Israel.
Right. So you were marching on the intent, but let me come back to on these marches, the subsequent marches, a regular cry at them is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Yes. Is that your position?
It's a chant. I've been asked this on many occasions.
Just give us the answer.
I was asked it by the Home Affairs Select Committee, and what I'm often asked is, do you tolerate the chant? And I'll repeat what I said. No, we don't tolerate it. We chant it. Why? What does it mean? It speaks to what I've just spoken about, that prior to this genocide, Israel had subjected the Palestinian people for 77 years to a system of apartheid that exists everywhere across historic Palestine. So within the state,
so you support the chant,
but also in the occupied Palestinian territory. So Palestinians will be free when that system of apartheid is dismantled across all of the territory between the river and the sea. That's what the chant means.
So, and the river is the River Jordan, and the sea is the Mediterranean.
Sure.
If Palestine is defined as being between that river and that sea, there is no more Israel, is there?
Well, there can, as part of any solution, not be any state that's practicing the crime of apartheid. If Israel were to continue to exist as an apartheid state, that would not be an acceptable solution. In the same way, there was no solution to the situation in South Africa that left apartheid in still functioning.
What would Israel have to do, in your view, not to be an apartheid state?
Dismantle its structure of apartheid, dismantle all of the laws that define Palestinian citizens of Israel as unequal.
And
To give
allow
one example, because not
allow any Palestinian to return, right?
allow the Palestinian right of return, which is enshrined in international law. It's not up for
Which would
debate.
mean no more, which you and I know, let's not dance on a pin here, would mean no more Israel. That's what you want. You either want Israel to surrender or negotiate itself out of existence. That's what you want.
Well, no, Andrew, I mean, I'm often asked this question, usually framed in a different way. But it lies behind what you're asking me, which is what happens to Israelis if apartheid is dismantled? And I will say, well, the same as South Africa. What happened to white South Africans when apartheid was dismantled? The majority of them stayed and committed themselves to being part of a post-apartheid future. Everybody that lives in the territory between the river and the sea has rights. But nobody.
And Israel would cease to be a Jewish state.
Nobody has rights.
Israel would cease to be a Jewish state, correct?
You're going to have to let me finish answering the questions.
No, I'm going to try and get you to answer the question. Would Israel cease to be a Jewish state?
It would cease to be a Jewish state if what you mean by that, and this is what Benjamin Netanyahu means by that, a state which can privilege the rights of Jewish people above Palestinians. No state has the right to do that, in the same way South Africa did not have the right to privilege the rights of white South Africans above black South Africans. It's not that difficult.
But it does have a right to maintain, if it sees it a Jewish majority. There are plenty of Islamic states in the world. Why can't there be one Jewish state?
Well, how, Andrew, I'll ask you a question, and you're right, Israel claims the right to be able to preserve a Jewish majority. How does it do that? What are the policies it enacts to do that? The way it does that is by denying, first of all, the Palestinian people their right of return, which is a violation of international law, but also through a series of policies that make life extremely difficult for Palestinians, so they leave. Forced expulsion of Palestinians, that's going on right now in the West Bank, it's happened in East Jerusalem. So that's how Israel, through a series of policies, seeks to try to preserve a Jewish majority. No state has the right to do that.
Really? Not even all the Arab states?
No, if they are enacting laws that discriminate against people
You've been to Saudi Arabia?
On the basis of their religion, of their ethnicity, I would stand against any system of ethno-nationalism wherever it exists. There is a commonality between people across the world at the moment who are trying to promulgate ideologies of ethno-nationalism. That's why the Minister of Diaspora Affairs in Israel has just invited Tommy Robinson to make a difference.
All right, Ben Jamal, I'm afraid I had a lot more to ask you, but you walked down memory lane and too many cases meant I couldn't get to it. Maybe you'll come back and we can try again with more time. That's Ben Jamal there, Director of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign.